discussing the facial nerve and Bell's palsy. So there are seventh nerve function test. So in some cases we are doubtful whether there is a Bell's palsy or no. So we have to perform certain tests to confirm our diagnosis. So these are called the seventh nerve function test, whether the seventh nerve is functioning well or no. So there are two things in the muscle. One is called paralysis, other is called paresis. So paralysis is the total muscular contraction loss, when the nerve supplying the muscle is fully cut through and through. So there is no connection between the brain and the muscle. Then the muscle total loss contraction is there, then it is called paralysis. Paresis means weakness of the muscle. It means nerve supplying that particular muscle is pressed temporarily and nerve is not fully cut. There is no complete cut of the nerve. Partial cut is there, or there is a compression is there because of some tumor or some fractured bony element pressing it. Then it is called the paresis. So there is a weakness of the muscle. Muscle is still can contract, but not with full force. Then we use the word paresis. So there may be paralysis or paresis depending upon this. So wherever we are doubtful, we perform certain tests. One is the test I have said you, that is to differentiate the supranuclear with the infranuclear Bell's palsy. We know nuclear means nucleus of seventh nerve. So nucleus of seventh nerve lies at the level of Pons, for example. Nucleus of seventh nerve lies in the brain stem of the brain, because all cranial nerves they start from the brain. The starting point of any nerve is called the nucleus. Nucleus means grey matter. Nerve is a white matter. Naturally, the white matter will start from grey matter. So this nerve starting from the nucleus is called the cranial nerve. And there are fixed foramens are present, emissory foramen through which it comes out. For example, the facial nerve comes through the stylo, through which foramen it comes out of the skull? Stylo. So this is stylomastoid foramen. So when it comes out of the stylomastoid foramen, it is called the extracranial course. Before it, it is the intracranial course. Then it supplies the muscles of the face in 5 branches. So when this nerve is cut after the stylomastoid foramen, it is called the infranuclear type of the Bell's palsy. If it is cut here, infranuclear. Then this nucleus of the seventh nerve is under the effect of, or seventh nerve nucleus is controlled by the higher centers of the brain. which lies above the brain stem, above the pons, medulla and midbrain. And the higher centers, we know they are lying at the motor area of the brain. And which is the motor area? Precentral gyrus of the cerebrum, homunculus. So you have done the brain, you know what is homunculus. This is central sulcus, precentral sulcus, postcentral. So this is the motor area of the cerebrum. Here lies the face, then neck, upper limb, thorax, abdomen, lower limb. So body represented upside down, and this is called homunculus. So our face, and this is called the motor area, this is the sensory. Motor means M for M, sensory means S for S. So this is the motor area of the brain or the cerebrum. So lowermost, what represent here? M for muscles of the face are controlled from here. Next is the neck. Muscles of the neck, they are controlled from this area. If I cut and throw this area out of the brain, my muscle will be, face and neck will be paralyzed. So that is the meaning of motor area. All the muscles from head to toe, they are represented on this strip of the gray matter, starting from here to precentral gyrus. That is the meaning. So the motor, it lies over here. Face and neck muscles are controlled from here, right and left. So this nucleus is under the effect of this. Now they say that the face area, the upper face area, they are having the double nerve supply. So the opposite side of the cerebrum, they accompany the upper part of the face, including the head area and the upper half of the eye area. So these fibers, which are crossing fibers, they cannot reach up to the lower part of the face. They are smaller, so they only can supply the muscles of the upper and half of the same area. So they are the cross. It means every facial nerve is having the both same side as well as the opposite side of the muscle of the control. That is meant by these fibers, they are called supranuclear and they are called infranuclear. So that is the supra and the infranuclear. So whenever we have to differentiate whether the patient is suffering from supranuclear, patient comes with the half of the muscle paralysis. You have seen it. All the signs is showing. Now you have to diagnose whether the patient is having supranuclear or infranuclear type of paralysis. So for that, in the supranuclear type means if lesion or the damage is here. So if this is in the supranuclear palsy, what happens? The brain is now cut off in the seventh nerve. So no message is coming to the muscles. The muscle will be paralyzed. But from the opposite side, this nerve is carrying the supranuclear fibers. They are accompanying the seventh nerve, which is coming from the opposite side of the cerebrum, but they are only supplying upper part of the face. So in the supranuclear palsy, patient can still make the horizontal lines on the forehead because these fibers, they are not damaged in the supranuclear type. But if there is an infranuclear palsy, then both from the opposite side and the same side, now whole of the half of the face will be paralyzed. Patient will be unable to draw the horizontal lines on the forehead. Is it clear? So in order to differentiate, so this diagram is very important. Draw it. It is not given in your book. This is the most difficult part of the Bell's palsy, to understand what is supra and infranuclear. Is it clear to each and everybody? So this is how to show. So in the infranuclear, both the opposite side fibers and same fibers, they are involved, and there is a total loss of the muscles on the from head to chin in infranuclear. So in the infranuclear, ask the patient to draw the horizontal lines. He won't be able to, because both the fibers, they are damaged now. But in the supranuclear palsy, patient can draw. So for that, what you do? The test we have to perform is the forehead test. Forehead test is the name of this test. We ask the patient to draw the horizontal lines on the forehead. If he can draw it, it means this is supranuclear type. If he cannot draw, it means this is, so this is the forehead test. Third test is eye test. Ask the patient to close tightly the eye. Now, if you coldly tied your own eye, try to open it. Just see, you can't open your own eye, because orbicularis oculi is so strong circular muscle that eye cannot be opened. But in the case of the Bell's palsy, only gentle pressure can open the eye. Very slight. It means he is having Bell's palsy. So that is how to differentiate. Then comes the balloon test or blow test or whistle test. If there is a balloon, ask the patient to blow it. Or if he can whistle it, then say whistle mark. Or if there is a candle, you say blow it out. So if the patient can't do this thing, because the half of the lips or the orbicularis oris is paralyzed and mouth remains open. So what will happen when it is blowing the balloon? So what will happen? The air will be leaked from paralyzed side, and he won't be able to. He can't suck the Pepsi with the straw, because suckling is also gone. So these are the certain tests we perform on the patient to confirm whether there is Bell's palsy or paresis or palsy. So they are called the 7 nervous. So the whistle test, the last test, depend upon the buccinator muscle. It is the buccinator muscle. Because buccinator muscle is the accessory muscle of mastication. So chewing of the food is only possible when the food comes between the maxillary and mandibular teeth. So chewing is, but in the case of the paralysis, so food will be accumulated on the paralyzed side, because the buccinator muscle is paralyzed. So have you done in the detailed buccinator muscle? We have done pinch and cock mechanism and everything. The saliva, how it drops, drop by drop, everything we have finished. And the paralysis of the buccinator muscle lead to the swelling of the jaw because of the accumulation of the saliva. When the patient is not taking food, saliva is accumulated. If patient is chewing the food, whole of the food comes on this side. Because the muscle, when it is paralyzed, it becomes long, relaxed, and it gives the space for the accommodation. And what is the action of these buccinator muscles? I have told you action of the buccinator muscle. One is the accessory muscle of mastication, second is the regulation of the saliva with pinch and cough mechanism, then it is a blowing muscle, it is a suckling muscle also, and pituitary duct is passing through it, so it presses and releases it. And what is the applied of the buccinator? Opposite the action. Opposite the action. That patient can't chew the food on that side. Saliva will be dribbling out. And patient cannot whistle, cannot blow, and cannot. So all the functions, they are zero in these cases. And how the muscles, they take origin from the pterygomandibular raphe. I told you pterygomandibular raphe, origin of the buccinator muscle, from maxillary side, from mandibular side, and from the. So this is how they cross at the modiolus, and how the lips, upper and lower lips, contains the not the fibers of the orbicularis oris, but the fibers of buccinator are present in our lips. So in the suckling of the Pepsi with the straw, lips are encircling it. So that is the buccinator indirectly is helping the muscle. So this is how we finish with the muscles of the face with their action, nerve supply, and applied. Now another things on the face is the arterial and the nerve supply, the venous drainage. Again you have to make the half of the face. So face is supplied by the facial artery and it is drained by the facial vein. So facial artery is the branch of the external carotid artery. So it comes from the neck, branch of external carotid artery, and this artery is tortuous, zigzag, spring-like, and from the neck it crosses the lower border of the mandible, body of the mandible, and then enters the face with this tortuosity. Why this artery is tortuous? Because it touches the mandible, and mandible moves. So that should be your answer. Anybody ask you why the facial artery tortuous? What is the answer? Number one, artery touches the mandible and mandible moves. That's all. In one line answer you have to make. Because when you open the mouth, now the artery becomes tortuous. And when you close it, it becomes small. So extra length is given by the spring-like, that is called tortuous. So stretching is possible in the facial artery, otherwise it will rupture. So that is the reason why the facial artery is tortuous. So there are so many arteries in the body which are tortuous, and there is a solid region behind it. Why the God has made some arteries straight and some tortuous. So this is the answer of the. Then this facial artery gives the branches, which is the marginal mandibular branch, supply the muscles of the chin. Then this artery reaches the angle of the mouth and lips and supply the superior labial and inferior labial artery. Then it reaches the nose area, supply the ala of the nose, and the muscles on the nasal side or nasalis muscle. So this is the course of the artery. The muscle around the eye and another region, so they are supplied by the branches of the maxillary artery. The facial artery only supplies the front of the facial muscles, front part of the face. So maxillary artery will take the origin and supply the other parts of this. Then its other branches of the facial artery, it also supplies the around the mouth to the tonsillar artery. It supplies the tonsils in the oral cavity also. So this is the course of the artery, how it goes from the angle of the mid. And it lies in front of the masseter muscle. Masseter muscle, it lies in front of this. So masseter muscle taken from the zygomatic arc and zygomatic bone. So this is the anterior border. So here it lies. Second is the facial vein. Now the facial vein, it starts from the supratrochlear and supraorbital veins of the forehead, unite near the medial angle of the eye. And this is called angular vein. This is called angular vein. Supratrochlear is the medial vein and supraorbital is a lateral vein. And this is called the angular vein because it lies in the medial angle of the eye. From here the vein runs straightway downward on the anterior border of the masseter and collecting the tributaries from the muscles of the face and tissue of the face and lies behind the facial artery near the lower border of the mandible anterior. So posterior is the vein, anterior is the facial artery. So that is the mutual relationship. And both are crossed by marginal mandibular nerve branch of the facial nerve we have done, which is coming from the neck. Branch of facial nerve is coming. So that is the relation between the muscle, nerve, artery and the facial vein. Then important part of the venous drainage of the face is the dangerous area of the face. So dangerous area of the face includes the nose and upper lip. Nose and upper lip. So this area is called the dangerous area of the face. Upper lip and the nose area. Why it is called dangerous? Because again the same as the dangerous layer of the scalp we have done. Extracranial infection can become intracranial infection. That is the reason. So whenever a question of the dangerous area of the face comes, then you have to explain the same as we have done in the explanation of the scalp. And then you have to make a separate diagram of the dangerous area of the face. Not this diagram. Because here this is the facial vein. It has nothing to do with the dangerous area. It is separate. When a question of the facial vein comes, then you have to make this diagram. The facial nerve vein comes at the lower part of the mandible leaving the masseter. Now it goes inside the neck, and inside the neck it meets with a vein coming from the posterior medial surface of the mandible of the parotid gland. A vein is formed from a superficial temporal vein which is bringing the impure blood from the scalp, and one vein is coming from the medial surface of the neck of the mandible. So nerve which is coming from the medial surface of the neck of the mandible. So neck of the mandible is related to three things. One is the nerve, other is the vein, and third is the artery. So three structures, they are just medial to the neck of the mandible. Name of the nerve is auriculotemporal nerve. Auriculotemporal nerve. And the name of the artery is which is this artery? Maxillary artery. And the vein is maxillary vein. So whenever the fracture of the neck of mandible is there in the roadside accident, so these three structures, they are going to be damaged. Auriculotemporal nerve will be damaged, maxillary artery and vein damage, it lead to bleeding just in front of in the medial surface of the neck. So in the neck, this facial vein will meet with the anterior division of the retromandibular vein. Retro means behind the mandible, because retromandibular vein comes out of the apex of the parotid gland, divided into anterior trunk and posterior division. Anterior division meet with the facial vein to form common facial vein, which will open into internal jugular vein. Internal jugular vein is a deep vein. So this is the common facial vein. So whenever the question of the facial vein comes, you have to make this diagram. But if the dangerous area of the face comes, then you have to make this diagram. Here what happens? That from the nose and the upper lip area, this area, upper lip, not lower lip, upper lip and nose area, a special vein starts from here. A special vein draining the area of the nose and upper lip start here, and this vein goes very deep into the upper part of the temporal fossa. Temporal fossa lies below the zygomatic arc. Above the zygomatic arc is the temporal fossa. Below the zygomatic arc, this whole area is called infratemporal fossa. So a vein from the nose and the upper lip goes deep into the infratemporal fossa. This special vein is called deep facial vein. Its name is deep facial vein. And this deep facial vein communicates with the pterygoid venous plexus. Pterygoid venous plexus which is formed on the lateral pterygoid muscle. Lateral pterygoid is a very thick muscle of mastication, and this is the only muscle which is the opener of the mouth. All three muscles of the mastication, they are the closer or the elevation of the mandible. This is the only muscle which is causing the depression of the mandible. Why? Because this muscle is inserted on the pterygoid fovea, which is present on the anterior surface of the neck of the mandible. So when the muscle contracts, the mandible head moves forward. So when it moves forward, it comes under the articular tubercle. And when the head comes below the articular tubercle, so the head goes downward. So there is a depression of mandible. So when the mandible down, mouth opens. So this is the mechanism of lateral pterygoid muscle. So it is a very thick and strong muscle. So veins comes out of it, bringing the impure blood, and it forms a plexus on the surface of the lateral surface of lateral pterygoid muscle. So this plexus is called pterygoid venous plexus. So this deep facial vein, it communicates with it drains, it throws its venous blood into the pterygoid venous plexus. And the pterygoid venous plexus is very near to the norma basalis. Norma basalis, and from the pterygoid venous plexus, 4 emissary veins they are starting. You have to remember 4 emissary veins they start from the pterygoid venous plexus. They go into the cranial cavity through the emissary foramens. That you have to remember, the 4 emissary foramens through which these veins they go. Number 1 is the foramen ovale. Oval foramen, that is called the foramen ovale. Second foramen is the foramen spinosum. So foramen ovale, foramen spinosum, and third is the foramen lacerum. Foramen lacerum. And the fourth emissary vein passes through the accessory sphenoidal foramen. Accessory So that is the how you have to write down first of all the venous drainage of the dangerous area of this is the venous drainage. Now you have to write down last part is the applied. Applied means how the infection reaches. So whenever a accidental case comes with the injury around the mask area, this dangerous area, or upper lip is cut, or nose having the lacerations, or area of the nose is damaged. So any injury around this area, the doctor attending that case give the utmost attention. We use the best disinfectant solutions or cleansing agent or antimicrobial solution used the best, because we know the danger of this area. Patient may die if the attention has not been given, because this area has been declared the dangerous area of the face. We give the best antibiotics to the patient to prevent any infection in this area, because if we are not giving the infection, the antibiotics and the cleaning the wound properly, then what will happen? Same as we have done in the neglected wounds of the scalp. So open spores of the bacteria will enter into the dangerous area. Maggots may go from the housefly, and bacteria travel and they reach ultimately to the cavernous sinus. Then the same thing which we have written in the scalp. Now in the cavernous sinus, what will happen? Cavernous sinusitis. Cavernous sinus lies almost in the middle of our cranial cavity. So patient comes with the complaint of number 1, fever, high grade fever, because infection is there. And what is the sign of the infection in the body? Fever. Second is the central headache, because cavernous sinus lies in the center of the skull, cranial cavity. So patient comes that I am having this pain not here and here and here. I am having the pain in the center of my head. So if such a complaint is given, we immediately came to know that he or she is suffering from cavernous sinusitis. Itis means cavernous sinus is red, hot, swelling and painful. So that is the pain. And from here the bacteria can travel to from the cavernous sinus, it goes to the internal jugular vein ultimately. And from here to the heart, and from the heart it distributed to each and every corner of the human body. So it leads to the multiple organ failure. All the blood reaching from the heart to every organ of the body is full of bacteria and pus. It is not a pure blood. And all the organs, they won't work with the impure blood. They will say that we are on strike now. We won't work with this dirty blood. So all the organs, major organs, the lungs, the kidney, the liver, they all fail. And that is the death. So that's why it is called dangerous area, that how extracranial infection reaching the intracranial. So that you have to explain in the essay form, as we have already done in the dangerous layer of the scalp. Then same sequely, from it now they will attack the meninges, because this sinus is intracranial interdural venous sinus. So it will damage the meningeal layer. And what forming the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus? Whole of the applied of the cavernous sinus you can write here also. Lateral wall of the cavernous sinus contains oculomotor nerve, trochlear nerve, ophthalmic nerve and maxillary nerve. All nerves will be pressed and damaged. And what lies lateral to it? Lateral wall. Medial surface of temporal lobe of the cerebrum, covered by arachnoid and pia mater. Now same bacteria from the wall of the meningeal layer of the dura mater, which is forming the cavernous sinus, will be attacked on the arachnoid and pia mater of the brain. And that will lead to same meningitis, which is also the life-threatening disease like sinusitis. And meningitis last will attack when pia mater will be damaged. What lies below the pia mater? Grey matter and white matter of brain. So now the bacteria will attack on the soft grey and white matter of the brain, and they will eat up the grey and white matter. They damage it, destroy it, and that is the last. That is called encephalitis. I have told you that is called encephalitis. So sinusitis, meningitis, encephalitis, all three are life-threatening diseases. So this is how the death occurs, due to damage to the brain last of all, encephalitis. So this you have to write down whenever a question of the dangerous layer of the scalp or dangerous layer of the face comes. So the applied is almost the same, but how the infection lead to the death of the patient. So this finishes with the questions and all things related to the face, the front of the face. So face is divided into three parts: front of the face, middle part of the face contains muscles of mastication, that is the temporal and the infratemporal region. Posterior part of the face contains parotid gland. So we will go systematically one by one. So this finishes with the whole of the face, with artery, vein, nerve, sensory as well as motor. The rest we will do in the next time.